Awesome. All right. So I'm going to record this just in case we have anyone who isn't here today. I'm not sure who all were able to make it. And if there's people like together in the rooms and not, but we'll do introductions. Good afternoon. Welcome to our pre-registered apprenticeship training with Pat and I on building an inclusive workforce. So let's jump right in.
We anticipated this originally was designed for the Mohawk Valley team. That tells you how long ago we've been working to try to make this happen, but they got too busy and we had to postpone it. And we did one session, and then Ruth and Alex joined the team. So we were like, yay, bring them all together. And Colleen said, absolutely. And Kay was like, let's do it. So here we are. But we figured there are people that don't know each other. So if we could quickly just encourage, invite you to introduce yourselves and the role that you have at the partners, notwithstanding Macney being our lead, we would appreciate that. So in my boxes, I see Alex first. So Alex, would you say hi to everybody and tell everybody where you are and what you do and blah, 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 blah.
Yep, happy to. Hi, everyone. So nice to see you, whether it's for the first time or I'm seeing you again. But my name is Alex Guillo. I'm the pre-apprenticeship program manager at the Center for Economic Growth based in the Capital Region. So it's very nice to meet some new faces today, and I'm excited to learn more.
Yay. And we're all teammates together. So, and then in my lineup is Ruth.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ruth. I am with the RTMA. I am excited to be part of the new program for the Real Life Rosies and Advanced to Apprenticeship programs. They created a new position here for me as a training and pre-apprentice manager. And with Colleen and Brandy's guidance, we've hit the floor running and are seeing some success and excitement out here.
Awesome. Cool. Kay, you're up next in my box.
Very good. We actually have a room full and the camera didn't seem to appreciate that, so we turned the camera off.
No problem.
I kept bouncing around the room. But anyways, Kay Lindsay, manager of pre-apprenticeship program for Macney. Brandy, we do have one person absent today, so the reporting is great. And I'll let the others in the room go around.
Yep.
Hi, Mariel Stoko, Workforce Development Specialist, focusing on Onondaga County.
Hello, Sarah Snyder, also a Workforce Development Specialist, and I will also be focusing on Onondaga County.
Hi, my name is Amanda Wilson. I am a Workforce Development Specialist, mainly focusing in the Mohawk Valley.
Is that everybody?
No, we have Amanda Coe that's also here.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Amanda Coe. I'm a Workforce Development Specialist for Macney, and I tag team the Mohawk Valley with Amanda Wilson.
Yay. And then our last, but on my list here, our fearless leader, Colleen. There she is. You're on mute, girlie. We can't hear all the good stuff you're saying. No. Well, there she is, Colleen, who has led us through this advanced process all the way along, and she'll continue to be part of making things happen all across the state. So we're excited. When we also having this recording is where we would like you to give us feedback. So we've done this training in all different kinds of ways, Brandy and I, but is it making sense for what you need to do and how you need to use it yourselves, so that these slides are available to you as you work with businesses, as you may work with advisory teams. Just know that anything that gets built is now part of the portfolio for all of you to utilize or to ask Brandy and I to help you do as well. So as we go through this and we work through this, if things don't make sense, if you recommend changes, if you'd like more information or less information, please, this is a moment in time for us to make sure that this is a toolbox that's full of good tools, not just stuff that Brandy and I are thinking about. Okay, so you get to learn, but also critique us, because you're all been hired and involved in the things that you do because you're good at what you do. So this is to enhance and offer additional supports and services to you guys to do your jobs. But Brandy and I are more than willing to change up things, rewrite things, design things differently if need be. So enough the introduction.
All
Kick it
right.
off, Miss
Thank
Brandy.
you, Pat. So, yes, today we're going to get into some strategies for supporting inclusive employment. Talking about why inclusion matters, universal design, plain language, strength-based, inclusive communication, as well as employment first. So we're remembering that inclusion is a workforce strategy. When systems work better for people with disabilities, they ultimately work better for everyone entering training and employment. So let's go. Foundations for success. So our first question there, why do people work? If anyone wants to come off mute or write in the chat, why do you think people work or want to work?
This is the interactive part. This is the part, it's like a training. So you guys get to actually talk to us. Ruth, what do you think?
I think people work out of necessity.
Okay. Yes,
9 times out
absolutely.
of 10, it's not because you're in your passion or dream role, but it's how we survive and take care of our families.
Being able to cover basic needs like food, housing, and bills. Those that one B word that nobody likes. Plus,
Exactly.
have fun, right? We always tend to think about working and making money because we have to pay for things, we have to take care of things, but there's also has to be moments for fun. And unfortunately, in the world of disabilities, that word fun doesn't necessarily always factor into a conversation. So we like to include that as a part of what we talk about. Any other ideas? Anybody want to start a conversation about it? What other reason? Why do you work? Hopefully it's not just to pay the bills. What other things does work bring for you?
Social enrichment.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And not only the social enrichment, but that like under there's a network, right? I mean, if you're not working, you're home. Hopefully you're in a home. And you have some place to, protect you, have a roof over your head, whatever. But it creates another kind of network for connecting with others, building relationships, and feeling part of a supportive community in general. When you're isolated and not doing anything, those are definitely not the things that you feel. I'm hoping the reason that you picked this job is for personal growth. People work and choose the jobs that they have in order to have some control over your own life, making decisions, learning new skills, and gaining experience. And last but not least, it is indeed a status. I don't know how many times I've gone, and all of you know, as you start meetings and you meet people for the first time, one of the first of the 5 questions that typically gets asked to start a conversation is, so what do you do for, where do you work? What do you do? When someone doesn't have an answer for that, it kind of puts them in a different place than everybody else in the room. And so we've seen that. It's important to note that all people go to work for the same reasons, whether you're a person with a disability or not. And you are going to have the opportunity to do different kinds of things. Abilities are different, but they drive decisions as to what job tasks can be done, and then when the career paths are followed. And you've each been charged in your role, as we understand it, to help people along a career path. The purpose behind this program being a free registered apprenticeship process is to help people explore. And I know from the work that I've done already with everybody in the Mohawk Valley and before you, Ruth, in Rochester, it has been a conversation around career path. Registered apprenticeship being a goal, but before we get there, helping them see all the different kinds of things that they can do.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the same reasons ultimately are the reasons that people with disabilities work. And I'm trying to get to the next slide. Here we go. So we
Yep.
wanted to also add this piece in here to help just with some numbers to consider. Did you know that 1 in 5 people represent the neurodiversity individuals within our society? That 30% of the workforce already has a disability, whether you know about it or not. And that 62% of folks report that their disability is invisible. So being disabled, people with disabilities is the largest minority group in America. And it's the only group that anyone can join at any time. So when we think about that holistically, um, disability cuts across every age, race, gender, and social economic group. So it's truly universal. So that point that I was making about the invisibility piece, right? 9 times out of 10, there are people already in these employers, in these businesses who have disabilities who don't talk about it. And that's okay. Because when a company works universally and will continue to talk about that, it makes it a supportive place for everybody. So
I do have
disability,
one.
Mhm.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Diversity is being invited to the party while inclusion is being asked to dance. And that's what we're looking for, that inclusive workforce. What was that, Pat?
Now, I was just to say, before I joined the training, this training to do this with you guys, I was listening to a presentation from a national group that actually reported that in light of some of the things that have been happening at a national level, the tariffs, believe it or not, it has created an increase in the number of people with disabilities that have actually been employed over the past 6 months. They have to look from within. And so, indeed, more people are actually getting offered jobs where they never were before. But that means we have to have a system that includes them. And that's what we were hoping to provide this information for you for. So, go ahead, Brandon.
Absolutely. All right. So when we look at IDD, intellectual and developmental disabilities and neurodiversity, it's really describing the differences in how people learn, process information, communicate, and ultimately work. But it's not about deficits. It's about understanding that even though their brain may work differently, they still have so much to bring to our workforces. And as many have already experienced in our group today, the training environment, right? The diversity of perspectives and thoughts that the folks who are joining our pre-apprenticeship training programs are a win-win for the environments, for the employers that they will be connected to. So I have some more details on the slide. Like Pat said, I think I did. I sent them out this morning. Everyone has them as a reference, really talking about that when we're looking at the spectrum of neurodiversity, that we are looking at the whole person and what can they do to thrive. So what we've learned is people with IDD often bring reliability, attention to detail, visual learning, hands-on skills, and pattern recognition, and a persistence to get the job done than people who don't identify. So, neural inclusion ultimately is what we are looking for in an inclusive workplace. Not so much focusing on what that disability is, but what is the ability they have and that unique perspective they bring to their work environment.
We also wanted to now remember, or you might not be aware because you're just getting into this project with us, but the original design was focused on an IDD neurodiverse group of people as our target for hiring and involvement and ultimate hiring. But we have broadened that thanks to the work that MACNY has done on all of this. And so we added this slide about physical and mental health disabilities, again, to give you as a reference. I'm not going to read everything here. You are all aware, I'm sure, of all different kinds of things. But what I think is key to this slide is the workplace considerations. Here's some examples of things if you were going to be working with a business who might be interested in starting a registered apprenticeship, or might even just be interested in having some of their incumbent workers trained first and foremost and move on towards something else. Here's some ideas around workplace considerations. Often they're called accommodations, that word that's scary and part of ADA and nobody likes to think about it. We like to reframe it now, again, using universal designs, workplace considerations, an accessible workstation. Anybody that works on a standing table these days, that's an accessible workstation. I mean, we are commonly doing those things. Flexible schedules or pacing. We have how many jobs now are actually listed as hybrid? not even, virtual, whatever they're called, hybrid. So people are already thinking that way. You just need to help them spread the outside edges so that we can see if there's more, what's the flexibility that goes there. Ergonomic tools, assistive technology. If any of you ever run across a need for assistive technology, there are programs throughout the state that offer things free of charge. They'll come evaluate free of charge any business setting to see if they can figure out assistive technology that might be needed or necessary to happen. There are programs that aren't getting federally funded cut for these kinds of things, so we can make sure that there's connections. Modifying the tasks without lowering the expectations is the key to any universal design. And I think that's the value of a pre-apprenticeship, our direct entry program, is we're giving people that sense ahead of time. With mental health disabilities, I don't know a person that doesn't at different times have some of these things in little doses, but there are people that are dealing with this day in and day out. And post-traumatic stress probably being the one that I believe, that since I work in that field a lot, that is most misunderstood and yet has the most potential to be needing flexibility. But they are indeed good people with strong skills and strong capacity. And so looking at some of those considerations, predictable routines. Boy, oh boy, in a manufacturing world, if that's not one of the key components that you've all taught me from manufacturing about predictable routines, it's definitely that way. And we would almost have to work harder to look at how to open those doors. But the clear communication, scheduling, quiet spaces or reduced sensory overload, not necessarily the kinds of things that people that have run manufacturing centers are always looking at. But that being said, I've gone on a few tours, and I'm sure you all have, where lighting and other kinds of things are already being considered because the existing workforce, as Brandy was saying before, are indeed people who will work better if they have some of these things already set up. So you may not be needing to ask for any of this, instead just reinforcing and confirming that you've already thought about this, right, sir? Or you've got this down, right, ma'am, about how you're going to help these people or any person that's going to be employed with you. So we wanted to just highlight those in particular to help you guys.
Absolutely. And Pat was mentioning that universal design, those supportive accommodations and workplace considerations to give it some, different terms that don't seem as scary. So, universal design for learning overall is about designing trainings, jobs, and workspaces so that more people that work for more people from the start, so that it reduces the need for individual accommodations later. So, it's all about improving safety and quality and reducing errors and overall strengthening that retention and productivity. Because we know if workspaces and the considerations are clear and flexible and usable from the beginning, more people will stay on board through the end, and that retention is there, right? Because what employer doesn't want folks to stay? And what we have learned in this process is the first step is getting someone in the door and hired with that manufacturer, but then they have to be there and productive and show their abilities in order to get to that next step of actually becoming a registered apprentice. So we want to see that happen for folks, and we know that universal supports is definitely the way of helping that. So there is a resource that is attached to the slides that were sent out about the rhythm framework, which is a way of thinking about building workplace clarity, and it can translate into the training environment as well, using that repetition, hyper focus, that yes before the no, really thinking about when someone needs something or some support with a thing, how can this work versus our human American brains, it's easy to go with the negative before we think about all those positives. But that's the great part about this network we have here of workforce development specialists and managers and trainers, and who really are going that extra mile. And that is what employers also need to understand. So that transition time in between tasks, unmasking, so normalizing those support systems that we have seen already, the power of collaboration, working with our disability resource coordinators when needed, and the workforce boards overall, to get those supports in place for people for transportation and childcare and such. And then that M in rhythm is movement. support thinking through movement. Warehouse manufacturing has warehouses that are full of different types of positions. And I love that Pat continues to bring that up. We think about the manufacturing technicians and the engineers and all that such, but that entire factory warehouse environment as a whole has tons of support positions that are needed as well. So universal design ultimately supports safety, productivity, and long-term workforce success. And if it helps one worker, it usually helps many, is the mindset that we want to think of when we are encouraging employers to be more universal.
So one of the steps, or the first step, as we've outlined here, is examining the language that we use. Inclusive language. You may have heard terms like person first. There's also now this thing called identity first. I think they've always been there. There's even terms like ableists. Depending on the level of the advocate that you might run into, all of this comes to play. But ultimately, it is around, asking the person. And I've listened to all of you in different ways in different meetings, and I'm confident that you are listening to the person first and foremost, and that's the key. So if that person prefers person first language, great. Then you'll basically speak, as it says there, ask about helping, speak directly to the person. Use plain language, person with autism, individual with a disability. They'll tell you that when they choose to disclose or not, you'll know whether or not they're a person first or their identity first. Many people on the autism spectrum are very okay and proud of the fact that they are autistic, and they will therefore, I am an autistic person. A person with a hearing loss, to the level of whatever that hearing loss is, they too have a culture where they really treat it as a disability. We had that experience. Ruth has been having that experience a lot there's a large deaf community. And it's not a community with people who are deaf. It's a deaf community. They are definitely an identity first culture. Right. Exactly, friend. So, understanding and asking the question first, it makes sense. Who are you, and do they tell you about it? So a person first language puts the person before the disability and emphasizes the individual, not the condition, where the identity first puts the identity or condition first, and embracing disability is an intricate part of their identity and or their culture. And we don't talk a lot about culture because that could be another whole training for another whole day. But indeed, that's how that plays out. It's key to recognize the significance of this language and communication and trust building. And again, I've watched all of you in action, and you got this. This is not anything new for you. I think the key to any of this is it's important to listen what isn't being said. That's a new kind of frame of reference when you look at all this kind of stuff, conversations about inclusivity, is taking the time to be aware of what didn't get said. You may observe something. I have a friend who's on the spectrum, and she blows my mind every time she says, I'm going to have to let somebody know because they don't know I'm a person with a disability. And I'm like, girlfriend, as soon as I talked to you once, I knew you had autism. I mean, there are people that just ring loud and clear, but how do they identify? How do they see themselves? That's the key to the success of them on the job and for when you let go, right? Once they finish the program and they leave. So next slide.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. So
I'm sorry. One, two.
no, go ahead.
Where's
Go
it
ahead.
going? There we
We're going
go.
backwards. There we go.
There.
That's you. Go ahead.
Okay, so we had a quick little practice here when it came to the rewrites and thinking about the strength-based philosophy. But Pat did it so well with giving the details and the descriptions of that difference in between identity first versus, oh my goodness, what are we doing? Person first.
Right.
My little mouse here, gotta change the battery. So she did a good job with the verses there. And this is really just another way of taking a moment to think about it. But first, really asking the preference, listening to the person and to what's not being said. If they're already identifying who they are up front, then that lets you know what to continue to roll with. Being neutral in introductions when you don't know, and always focusing on the strength and the job impact for the person. So let's see.
Do you guys use any terminology in particular when you meet someone? Has anybody picked a term that you're comfortable with that seems to be almost a universal term as you're talking about? Are you using students? Are you using participants? Are you using, job seekers, intermingling all of that? Does that make sense? What are you guys doing?
I use participants primarily, but I can also, depending on
Yeah, we would say
referencing in the group.
participants.
Yeah, can range.
Or with
Participant.
the Alex.
Go ahead, Kay.
I think at the beginning, I refer to them as both students and participants because I want to still ensure that they're learning, like they're in the classroom. So I like to intermingle the two just to reinforce what you're putting into the class is what you're going to get out of it. And then in more intimate settings, when, for example, we do some of the soft skills and job readiness skills for manufacturing here at the RTMA, it's a little more, a funner environment. I'll just, if I'm trying to grab the room's attention after a break, I'm like, all right, friends, let's come on back. Like,
Right. So clearly, and Kay, you guys were there things that you were going to share from Mohawk Valley?
We typically use participants and sometimes students.
So already, you see what I'm saying? You're not going, oh, that, actually, I love when you talk about Rosies, right? Everybody's a Rosie, right? It's not about who they are as an individual at all. It's about who they are now in this new culture of your pre-apprenticeship program. They have a status.
Yeah.
So the thing we talked about in the beginning around why do people go to work, many of these folks may never have actually had a function that they were proud of. Being a student or a participant in this program in and of itself could be the very first time, some of them. And I remember the early classes, Colleen, remember some of those folks that came right from the agencies, they had none. I'm drawing a blank, Brandy, to the big guy from Mohawk Valley that, we knew needed some extra supports. And it was really, he was brilliant. He is brilliant. And yet he didn't have an opportunity to show it off until he became part of the Mohawk Valley, the direct, A2A program. So the status that comes with even being part of this program in particular sets the stage for what you can do. So be excited about that. So here's some rewrites that we wanted to share. Again, these are tools. We want to help you see it, but also quickly go through this if you want. The original one, it's easy. She suffers from a disability. Suffers is the word we don't like, right? So she is a person with a disability, or if it's identity first, if they prefer, she's a disabled woman. And then ultimately being very strength-based. So it's the ones across the bottom that we would encourage you to add to your vocabulary, add to your communication style. She's a professional who uses accommodations to work effectively and meet performance goals. Yes, it's more words, but it describes and it tells the story better than leaving the first one that just says she suffers, right? I mean, then the person listening immediately goes to the negative instead of taking a look at the positive and the strengths. The words that are at the bottom would be something that I would write in a reference letter for someone because I wanted to post and show off the positives and who that person is and the strengths that they have. The he performs well in roles. Things like that are really, really going to be important. Go ahead,
Absolutely.
Corinne.
So thank you. So I'm just trying to be mindful of time and make sure we can use all of our
Understood.
content here. So plain language and that access and understanding. So our core principles here is basically when we are communicating with people and really helping to translate into the manufacturing world for them too, using those everyday words, using that active language, trying to stick to one idea at a time, and really always providing those concrete examples. I think the touring piece is so great within the process that we do with the training because it really gives concrete examples. They can see it, they can smell it, and they can, some instances, touch it depending on if they get to make different things. I know in Mohawk Valley, some of our students were able to make some trinkets and stuff in the Fab Lab. So making sure that people have those examples are great. And when we think about language, we're really giving folks those step-by-step instructions. There's a lot of pieces when it comes to the curriculum for pre-apprenticeship, right? We have our in-class pieces, but we're also expecting our student participants to do some asynchronous work and being able to find, upfront who really needs more assistance when it comes to having things, information broken down for them, just makes it all more better. And even when it comes into job development and their placement and where they end up working, is this a place that already has that universal support set up, right? I've been in some companies where they have visual cues everywhere. We know to keep that in mind for a person that really thrives in that type of environment to, pair them in that way. Other plain languages extensions are for those job postings and the onboarding, the safety instructions. Sometimes the information given can look like, all this little fine print and stuff. Do we need this bigger for some folks? Do we need this in a visual cue for some folks? Just things to consider to make sure that they're getting the clear understanding of the information that's being shared. And we have that example there, right? Our jargon in the manufacturing world. Prior to commencement, appropriate PPE shall be donned. Like, okay, what, huh? Before you start, put on safety glasses and gloves, keeping it very plain language, universal, for better access to understanding.
Yeah, I use the word donned all the time with my 5-year-old grandson. Sure.
You want to do this one, Pat?
Sure. The rest of this here, I mean, again, these are just some more things to avoid and or use. Neurodiversity, the avoidance stuff. I'm not going to really get use is a new way of thinking about differences. I think everybody, even neurodiversity, is becoming a controversial word in the scheme of things. It becomes different frames of reference become overused. So bottom line is stick to what the person has presented to you as important and necessary to make sure and don't be afraid. I've also learned a lot about people that are on the spectrum, and the spectrum does include mental health disabilities. Someone who is bipolar actually is on the far end. If you look at a spectrum of communication to lack of oral communication to full oral communication, people who are bipolar actually are on that far other end of the spectrum in regards to how they process information. A lot of neurodiversity is really about processing. It's dealing with and taking in information in different kinds of ways. So it's a new way of thinking about differences, but differences mean deficits. I think that's what we also, Randy and I, want to push in. ADHD, that's hyperactivity kinds of stuff. You're not going to get a kid or an adult who identifies as having ADHD to sit still. It just doesn't happen. They can't. If they do, if you force it, and then other things have to, it's like putting popcorn, you know what I mean? The popcorn pops all over the place because it has to do what it has to do. The brain does not allow somebody who is hyperactive to be quiet and regulate. They'll have to figure out how to regulate themselves. So being able to allow someone to express themselves and talk about things, but that being said, they may not even know that they do it and that they need it that way. So we want to give you some of those things as you meet people if they seem to identify in that way. You have to also submit. Wait, go back now. Go back.
Uh-oh.
Go back. You slipped up to go next.
There we go.
There it goes. Okay.
So that was another example there.
Yeah, right. And the 30 days, I mean, that's the flexibility. We have to be careful too. I just want to reinforce, while we're pushing to get people enrolled and to get things done and be on a timeline, as best we can, create the opportunity for clear directions. So even it says 30 days before requiring a certification. We need to just make sure our language is demonstrative of what we expect others to do. That's all I'm going to say. I had a funny VR wanted to make sure that the people that Ruth was working with who were deaf enroll in VR services. You had a cohort turn around in 6 weeks, right, Ruth? I mean, like your last cohort, people got involved, and got literally graduated in 6 weeks. There's no way VR is going to ever be able to make eligibility happen for that people. So if they want to be involved, then we're going to ask them to do a fast track to make
Yep.
sure that the people that might be on their things, right? That kind of stuff. So being able to push back on those kinds of things is the stuff that Brandy and I love to do, and we look forward to still doing that with you guys as we keep moving forward. So
Absolutely. So you were starting to talk about those universal supports, right? When we're thinking
yep.
about how people move and in their cognitive processing, understanding that the focus there is learning and task execution. So we have an example here of some of those different supports. I've talked about the visual aids before. Checklists can be extremely helpful for folks who really need to be able to focus and key into, okay, I did this, what's next? So that they can continue with their independent journey of supporting themselves, right? You're setting them up for success. That physical endurance piece, if you find that a person is struggling in that area with their stamina, having those built-in rest breaks and thinking about ergonomic adjustments. We started talking about those stand-up desks. Those have become very popular, but making sure that where possible, standing pads and all those things are in place really go a long way to help that person not only feel supported, but for them to maintain their stamina and endurance. And depending on the situation, a lot of accommodations can be very low cost and free for a person. And then the sensory sensitivity, working with people who are deaf and hard of hearing has shown that, okay, I always tend to think about the noisy environments and how much that, for myself, I wouldn't like an environment that's noisy all the time. But I know there was a company who basically found that hiring people who are hard of hearing and deaf into their very noisy manufacturing environment became a win-win because it wasn't bothering them. So things like that is what we want to consider as you're getting to know the students and participants and matching them with the different employers who are out there and what their environment look like. And ultimately, it is universal design, and those universal supports create inclusive workplaces. So I have this slide here all about the learning pyramid. And ultimately, it's reminding us that how people learn matters. Because if somebody is very visual and we're always being auditory, they're not getting that information that you are giving them. And the data shows us that 5% of lecture gets through to a person anyways. So we want to make sure that people are having those additional touch points to learn the information they need. And where possible, being able to practice in person, using those group designs within the training environment, and if you can get a student participant to teach someone else, well, that's where the true learning occurs because it's showing what understanding they have as they are passing that on to someone else. Um, Ultimately, we've learned that people who do have IDD and different disabilities tend to thrive when they're more active, right? So if we're having those discussions, having those hands-on demonstrations are huge. And one of the pieces that we have marketed for pre-apprenticeship training from the beginning, wait, it's a part of pre-apprenticeship training, right? So having those hands-on experiences really tie in greatly with the population that we're talking about, with people who need these inclusive environments, and manufacturing is all about that. So learning by doing is what I'm talking about, and it's essential for workforce training. And when we design an environment that is inclusive, it ultimately improves the outcomes for everybody. And this learning pyramid aligns with that rhythm support. So when I talked about universal learning designs earlier, I talked about that rhythm, basically acronym to keep our minds thinking about how we're moving people along the continuum of learning. And having them to be able to emphasize what they're giving in repetition, right, in multiple formats. So we talk about it, we do some hands-on practice, they have their asynchronous work that they do as well. allowing some of that hyper focus to be just in that hands-on practice that I'm referring to, building in that transition time. I know, I think about the advanced to apprenticeship program that started in Rochester with the Forward Center and how it was a week-long process, which was different than our 3 weeks, or I mean, sorry, 3 days or 2 days that our different formats have had. But in that week-long process, people got an opportunity to have that hyper focus, right? They're coming every single day, staying in it, and it definitely helped to move people through the process. And then normalizing those visual supports and movement for that active engagement, like Pat was referring to. If someone is used to moving all the time and we try to sit them down, it's not going to match. So making sure we meet people where they are. And then I wanted to give you all a bit about Employment First in New York State. And that it essentially, you're probably going to see it around a lot because there's a fierce marketing campaign across our great state to make sure everyone knows Employment First. And ultimately, it means competitive and integrated employment as the first and preferred options for people with disabilities, period. We're not seeing employment as a oh baby back burner. Everyone is being offered the opportunity to not only know what employment is, but have employment opportunities that match them and work for them. That's what this is about. That's what inclusion is all about. And we want to make sure that people are truly seeing it as seeing inclusive workplaces and workforces as a value and not just a talent strategy, right? Like we want this to be ongoing because we know diverse workforces are a stronger representation of our community all the way around. So when people with disabilities have great employment, like manufacturing and registered apprenticeship opportunities provide them, it helps to foster greater independence all the way around, making them more of a contributing member to our society all the way around, right? Like we need more workers to make our state work to get all of the things done that we need, all of the supply chains and the products and all that great stuff. So in New York, we are committed to zero exclusion and making sure that everyone who wants to work has the opportunity. So these pre-apprenticeship programs truly provide some of that exposure, but truly that linkage and that bridge from training into employment, which we know is a winning formula. All right, Pat?
Just to sum up that piece, and this is
Yeah.
what this slide does, it sums up what we just went through. But if you're wondering, does has our program been recognized? And the answer is yes. We were able to present at the DREAM event in October, the Disability Rights Employment Awareness Month celebration that New York has in October every year for the National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And we were unique in most of the other presentations. We're focused on the state workforce and building a state workforce, but MACNY's program is the conversation these days around manufacturing, with New York being a leader in manufacturing jobs and businesses and whatnot. Indeed, the governor's office is very well aware. I love watching Commissioner Reardon talk about real life Rosies on a regular basis. And now the Chief Disability Office is talking about advanced to apprenticeship. So both of the pre-apprenticeship direct entry programs are being recognized by the governor's office in different ways, but for all the right reasons or for all the real reasons. So congratulations on being part of a team that's going to make a difference all the way around. And thank you, Colleen, for your leadership with the University of Rochester. It's been an honor to be a part of this stuff. So we just wanted to use this slide as a way to sum up. If you wondered what you just listened to in a quick woof kind of presentation, it's the idea that all difference, like I said, differences do not mean deficits. We need to look at matching tasks to strengths and conditions for success. every meeting I've been a part of with any one of you, Ruth and Alex, just starting to talk about it with your enthusiasm and your energy about what you've been hired to do. It makes my heart sing listening to everybody else, because I work with those guys from Mohawk Valley on a weekly, basis, and getting the updates. That's exactly what you all do. Even with everybody else from Herkimer Solutions, you're constantly looking at the person first. We want to make sure that we're looking for that inclusive language and being a model, using either person first or identity first based on that person. And you do that with the respect that always is there for that individual. And even the follow-up stuff. I can't believe the amount of great follow-up you guys do compared to what I've seen in the rehab system. Pat yourselves on the back, because most people in the other way, on the other side of the equation, give up. You never give up on your students, and it's really, really redeeming to see it all that play out. We want to make sure that we have clear step-by-step instructions. Alex, you do a phenomenal presentation in regards to this kind of stuff. You have clearly outlined exactly what people should expect, can expect, and will get. I applaud that slide that you put together, that one. You might want to share it with the rest. We might want to make it a problem, but it is really, really, it doesn't let anybody off the hook, and it lets people know you have to be this age, you can only do this. I mean, too often we're wishy-washy in regards to what we want to do. Right from the beginning, we're telling people what can happen, how it can happen, and why it can happen, what will happen if they do it. So using that same kind of strength and plain language with that through the rest, and teaching other people how to do it, that's what should be on the next burner to take on. Universal design and sensory basics was also a part of this conversation. We hope we gave you some new tools, some new ideas to make that happen. And of course, why does it matter? Because then we'll be part of, with this project to ongoing through the work that Mackie is going to lead, the employment first piece, and making, not letting it be forgotten. It's not forgotten by Commissioner Reardon, and it's not going to be forgotten by the Chief Disability Office. Kay and Brandy and I have a meeting coming up with the #2 for the employment first specialist team in order to learn more about what we're doing and how we're doing it. So they've asked to meet with us, and we're ready to tell them all about it. And so that leads us to this really neat visual. There's equality and then there's inclusion, right? Certainly in the first one, everybody has an equal box, but some can't use it, or even if they do, they can't really see over it. But if we create room where everybody's getting the same opportunity, then we've got inclusion. And we thought we'd end with that and then let you ask us questions. Or again, here's your chance to critique us. What did we overstate, understate? Did it help you? Does it give you stuff that makes sense? Because of course, the next slide is going to be the QR code for you to give us an evaluation, because Brandy works in a university that requires evaluations of everything. So we want you to be gut honest, please, and let us know. But before you go in there, if you want to tell us, have any questions, thoughts, reactions, things that you've dealt with, if you have questions about somebody that you may be already having in class that you're wondering, how should we handle this? We would love to offer you some ideas.
If I may jump in with a question, I'd love to ask the experts in the room. Fortunately, I can't say that I've run into this situation yet, but I'm curious if others have, and maybe any language or processes that you've done on how you might suggest that a manufacturer or an employer be open to the considerations if you're not already kind of seeing some of the signs around as you're touring the space and everything. If it's not obvious that they've already given consideration to accommodations to existing employees or ones that might come around later, how do you broach that to them in a way that maybe doesn't critique what they're already doing, but offers as, what's really a positive to everyone?
Great question.
It's okay if we're all still figuring it out, because I am too.
That's a shot across the bow to the conference room in Syracuse or Utica, wherever you guys are. Colleen's trying to talk, but I don't think there's. So Kay, I'm going to put you on the spot. You told me that you went to see a new business that would be part of the baseball bat. You were just telling Brandy and I about the baseball bat company. How did you broach it? Or Alex, is your question more about a new business, or when you went on a tour watching that some people could have had some supports and you want to add to it?
It could be either of those. I think,
Okay.
there are the opportunities when you're in the facility and talking to someone versus sharing, what the program is all about, and that they should be, open to the opportunity of considerations.
I think for me, it kind of goes back to a little bit of that information that Brandy shared about they're already doing it, right? I mean, 30%. So I didn't have that number, and I appreciate you having that. But they're already working with people with disabilities, whether they know it or not, right? And so, um, you know, I do. If I'm going to talk about it directly like that, I'll say, I'm sure that you are already working with some people with disabilities, because I am sure of that, and that helps them go, right. This isn't like something different, and I talk a little bit about how you know every employee needs a little bit different support, and the other thing too, sometimes I'll talk about is how um, with the change, in society in regards to the the smaller number of people who are within the age range for working is getting smaller. We have to look for different pipelines and different ways to meet the business needs when the availability to recruit people is getting a little more difficult, right? And so, and it's in part because of the, less population at a mark or at a employment age. It's in part because, unemployment rate's been low. And so, this is an untapped pipeline is kind of how I pitch it to them. This is a kind of an untapped pipeline, and it's just different. It's not any easier or harder. It's just different.
Alex, and everybody else, I'd also like you to know that if you have a business that might value an evaluation of their space, the Cornell University Yang Tang Institute, actually will do that. They will come and they will do an evaluation and let people know where they might be able to help. So, I mean, there's services beyond what you don't have to become the expert, is where I'm going here. As you identify something, and if somebody expresses an interest, it should not be on MACNY or its partners to feel like you have to bring it all. There are already people out there. So, just reach out to Brandy and I, and we'll figure that out. That's the other value to what we bring to the table here, is the ability to find the other partners that are interested in having people with disabilities hired, and they've got funding to do it. So you don't have to use it out of your pockets to try to do that kind of stuff. You become the resource, which is ultimately what I think is invaluable about any and all of this, is that you become the resource for connecting the dots from their workforce to their success as a business too. But you don't have to be it all by any stretch. There's plenty of other places to do it.
Absolutely. We're definitely here as a resource, throughout the rest of this grant and beyond. And one of the pieces that I wanted to add, because before I was in my current role, I was a director of business relations for a not-for-profit provider for job coaches and people with disabilities to, gain employment. And one of the things that I used to do when I went out to meet different businesses, or even if I was at a networking event like the Chamber of Commerce or something of that such, is I would start with them, well, tell me about your business, and what kind of needs do you have? They would say it right within it. Oh, I have so much issues with keeping staff, quality staff. Typically was the same sentiment for most people, but I would make sure that I took their information and I would follow up with them first with, oh, well, do you offer tours? It would be, great to get to know and to see your environment. And then from there, oh, have you ever been a panelist? Would you be open to a reverse interview? Maybe coming into one of my training classes and allowing the students to ask you questions about what you do, so that they can get to know more about your business as well as a future workforce. And then allow that to organically lead into them wanting to hire my people because we have this relationship and they're calling to say, well, hey, I know you got that training class. You got people who are available. And I know it doesn't happen like that for every business, but for some of them, there's definitely value in building up that relationship with multiple touch points as you are moving into becoming, having them become one of your supportive businesses. Because sometimes it's just that fear of the unknown. And unfortunately, there are still a lot of I would call them archival images in people's minds about working with people with different abilities and what that means and how much work it'll be and is it charity. But the reality is we're in workforce development. We are here for your workforce development. We're not bringing you someone who isn't capable and able to do the work. So let's stay focused on what this is and not what that is. So that's
the statistics also show, Lynn, Kay, you said you like the statistics. I don't have the percentage, but the reality is that more small and medium-sized businesses are open to this workforce development strategy because, you know why? Because they don't have HR directors. They don't have HR directors that went through a body of training that told them to worry about ADA, that told them that, ooh, those things are hard. Those things, I mean, that's the training that still needs to be fixed. On the other side is how to help the HR directors really get past ADA as a rule and a fear factor on you're going to get sued if you don't do this, that, or the other thing. So, but that doesn't stop you from looking at small and medium-sized businesses or big businesses, but just then if there's an HR specialist that's a little bit funky about all this, then ask us or we'll bring somebody over. We'll help change their minds. And if
we
they're
have
going to
resources, free
right,
resources to do that.
yeah. But if they're going to be hard, then go on to the next one. There's plenty more. And
Great point.
I mean, Alex, I was listening at your meeting and the Brian Williams said there's 900 manufacturers in the capital region. 100. I didn't know that. Right. I mean, so if one is giving you a hard time, thank you. When they find out that you helped 5 others, then they might come back to the table too, because competition is an important factor in all of this. So
absolutely.
Yeah, don't kill yourself, but please see us as a resource.
Great question. Any more questions? I know
much.
we're at 2:05. I want to be mindful of time, but we're here for it. I can throw our information back up there. Thank you in advance for doing the survey to let us know what you thought about today. And we do have a part 2 coming up in a couple weeks or a week. I don't have my calendar in front of me, but you've gotten the invite. So we look forward. The 20th. Perfect. We look forward to seeing you then as well. But I will make sure that I throw our contacts into the chat if anyone wants to continue the conversation before that.
But I think this conversation about business engagement, which is what part 2 is more about, is how to some strategies around business engagement. We'll take that back and we'll revisit our slides to make sure that we have good resources there and suggestions for you guys to be able to use. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll see you soon.
Bye, Medico.
Bye.